all day.
That's how we met. We was in the Bronx in the pool hall. After that battle, he went to like a show. He got on stage, Jay-Z, where you at?
Before champagne deals, billionaire moves, and boardroom power plays, Jay-Z had a real problem. And that problem was DMX. Their tension didn't just simmer, it almost blew the whole spot up, to the point where even 50 Cent later claimed Jay was lucky DMX didn't press him that day. This wasn't industry drama. This was street code, pride, and raw power clashing in one room.
When that said, Jay wasn't lying. Everybody that was on that tour at that point in time was like, we could just pack our shit and go.
Early 90s, inside a dusty, low-lit studio that smelled like old tapes and ambition, two young New York MCs stepped into a moment the streets still whisper about. It was 1994. The corners were freezing, cracks still ran the blocks, and hip-hop was shifting from freestyle battles to real money moves. Jay-Z, Sean Carter, had been drifting between the streets and the booth, hustling, freestyling on Jazzo tracks, and moving weight back in Marcy. He was sharp, fast, calculated, and hungry. Before reasonable doubt, before executive seats, before global fame.
No. Dripping sweat. They going crazy. In between songs, he can't even hear what he's saying because they screaming.
He was just a man with bars and something to prove. DMX, Earl Simmons, walked in from Yonkers shirtless, sweating, and filled with raw emotion. He didn't bring industry polish. He brought scars, bruises, and a notebook full of pain waiting to erupt. X was just beginning to shake the underground, popping up on DJ Clue tapes and tearing through Stretch and Bobbito's WKCR 89.9 show where unsigned rappers went to battle. He wasn't signed. He wasn't refined.
Dripping sweat. They going crazy. In between songs, he can't even hear what he's saying because they screaming.
He was dangerous in a way the industry wasn't ready for. People who were in that room, producers, interns, even security, still talk about how the energy changed the second the cypher started. Jay stepped up calm and strategic, dropping clean multi-syllable bars like he was plotting out a chessboard. But when X stepped forward, the whole vibe shifted. He barked, he growled, he spit like every word came straight from something he survived. It wasn't just rap. It felt like an attack. Uncle Murda once said, X ain't just rap, he attacked. And everyone who was there describes it the same way. There's no official tape, no clean footage, just stories that traveled through the streets like myth.
We met battling. That's how we met. We was in the Bronx in the pool hall. After that battle, he went to like a show. He got on stage, Jay-Z, where you at?
Some say DMX edged it. Some say Jay held his ground but definitely felt the pressure. They dapped it up afterward, but that tension didn't just fade away. It lingered, and everybody around them felt it.
I was actually forced to be an artist and a businessman because when I tried to get a deal, I couldn't get a deal, so I had to create Rockefeller Records. We actually created Rockefeller Records from nothing.
It wasn't just a battle. It marked the start of a rivalry shaped by quiet distrust because DMX always felt Jay-Z carried that industry coolness, that distant vibe, that sense of not being fully real, and it burned him inside. That dude ain't giving me no love when I was down. I don't forget that, DMX would say years later in a Rough Riders documentary. Jay never dissed X in public, but people close to him said he noticed something in DMX's eyes that day. Something cold, unsettled, and ready to snap. That Bronx studio moment ended up becoming one of the last real underground rap clashes before both men shot into superstardom, and it didn't end in peace.
You know, I go to do the 6th album. And, you know,
Jay-Z became president.
Yeah. When he first got the job, he hit me with the call like, yo, dog, MH is running the building like, yo, you good? Finish the album, shoot the video. What happened? Niggas go on vacation and...
It just opened the first chapter in a long, silent war. By 1998, both men had left the underground behind. Jay-Z and DMX had become forces in a rap industry that was turning into a corporate machine. Jay-Z dropped Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, a monster commercial release that went 5 times platinum and carried hits like Can I Get Up and the now classic title track. He was entering boardrooms, shaking hands with executives, and talking ownership when most artists were just learning contracts. Meanwhile, DMX hit the scene like a live wire. In May, he released It's Dark and Hell is Hot, a raw, brutal project that spoke straight to the streets.
How do you listen to a whole album, pick a single, shoot a video, then don't know? Okay, I see what's really good. You're trying to eliminate the competition. Then get me off the label. Now you're back rapping again.
Then, only 7 months later, he came back with Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, another #1 album in the same year. both multi-platinum. He pulled off what most thought impossible. He became the people's champion, fueled by pain, faith, and chaos, without needing suits or strategy sessions to guide him. But behind the success, tension kept building. On paper, Jay-Z and DMX were both signed to Def Jam. In reality, they lived in two separate worlds. Jay-Z moved like a strategist, studying every angle and making precision plays. DMX moved from the heart, raw and reactive, and he didn't trust the corporate world or the people running it. Most importantly, he didn't trust Jay, and that distrust followed them on the road, quietly shaping everything that happened next. When the Hard Knock Life tour launched in late 1998, it was a cultural moment for hip-hop. Jay-Z headlined with a stacked roster: Method Man, Redman, Beanie Sigel, and yes, DMX. On stage, they delivered some of the most legendary performances of the late 90s. But backstage, the vibe was cold. DMX barely spoke to Jay. People on the tour said X watched everything around him, especially Jay, with a sharp eye. He didn't like the atmosphere, and he didn't like the structure. To X, the tour didn't feel like unity. It felt like a board game where Jay was quietly moving every piece. At the same time, Jay-Z was making his slow climb toward real executive power with Dame Dash and Kareem Biggs Burke beside him. Together, they were turning Rockefeller into a brand and a business machine. Behind closed doors, Def Jam executives noticed. They saw Jay as polished, business-minded, and someone who could navigate both street talk and corporate rooms without breaking stride. DMX noticed it too, and it didn't sit right with him. As Def Jam began talking about leadership changes, whispers spread about the label searching for a new president. Leor Cohen and Kevin Liles were already leaning toward giving Jay more authority. Rockefeller wasn't just successful anymore. It looked built to last. So when Def Jam started handing Jay a bigger role in shaping the label's direction, DMX took it personally. Jay-Z wasn't just rising. He was becoming someone with power over him, and X couldn't accept that. In his eyes, Jay hadn't put in the same gritty groundwork, hadn't taken the same risks, hadn't bled for it the way he had.
Rapper DMX is on life support after suffering a heart attack. His attorney confirmed the news this weekend.
He felt Jay's rise wasn't just a career shift, it was a threat to the culture's soul. X couldn't shake the sense that Jay symbolized the same corporate machine he had always fought against. What started as respect had turned into something darker: silence, paranoia, a slow-burning resentment. And when Jay-Z accepted the presidency of Def Jam in the early 2000s, it didn't just feel like a business move, it felt like confirmation. For DMX, it proved every worry he had. From that point forward, there was no repairing things. Territorial, political, and personal. All of it blended together at the exact moment Jay-Z stepped into his new role. He wasn't just another artist anymore. He was now the president of Def Jam, one of the most powerful seats in East Coast hip-hop. He held the keys to the same building where he and DMX once fought for a spot on the roster. And that is when everything shifted. Behind closed doors in the Def Jam Manhattan offices, some say it happened on the 8th floor in the executive boardroom. Jay-Z allegedly made a move that crossed a line X never expected. According to people close to DMX, Jay pushed back the release date for X's next album, saying the timing wasn't right, the market was crowded, and the numbers wouldn't land the way they needed to. From a business perspective, it was a clean decision. But to DMX, it felt like betrayal. From X's perspective, he had carried Def Jam through the late 90s when the label was on shaky ground. His albums kept the label alive. It's Dark and Hell is Hot, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. And then there was X, all #1 debuts, all stamped with his pain and his truth. Now the same label he helped keep alive was trying to stall him, and the person doing it was Jay-Z. That night, something in X snapped. People who were there, or close enough to hear what went down, still talk about it in pieces. DMX showed up at Def Jam without warning, shirtless, sweating, unsteady, moving straight through security as if they weren't even there. He marched toward the executive wing with one intention. He wasn't pulling up for a conversation. He was pulling up for confrontation. Jay-Z was already inside the room, surrounded by execs, assistants, and a couple of Rockefeller staff. What happened next has been kept in whispers for decades. DMX burst into the meeting, and the whole atmosphere collapsed. He pointed at Jay, his voice shaking with emotion, not fear. "You think you my boss. I made this label hot." Jay-Z didn't stand, didn't raise his voice. People who were there said he stayed still, but the tension was brutal. Nobody moved, nobody breathed. Nobody knew if the next moment would be an argument or something much worse. Some claim DMX reached toward his waistband like he was about to pull something, and that is where the story cuts into shadows. Some people say DMX didn't even need to reach for anything. The look in his eyes alone froze grown men in place. That cold, distant stare, the kind someone gets after living through real battles, told everyone in the room he wasn't bluffing. One Def Jam staffer, who later spoke without revealing their name, said security was seconds away from jumping in, but then the moment shifted. Maybe it was Jay-Z staying calm. Maybe it was the fact that too many people were watching, or maybe X only wanted to make a point, not cross a line. Whatever the truth was, Jay-Z never talked about it publicly, but people close to him said he walked out of that room different. He didn't get touched, he didn't fall apart, but something in him changed. From that day on, Jay kept a respectful distance. In public, he stayed professional, polite when needed. But anytime DMX's name came up behind the scenes, the room got heavy. There was caution, strategy, and an unspoken understanding that things had almost gone too far. That day at Def Jam wasn't just an argument, it was a signal. By the early 2000s, the world started to understand DMX wasn't creating a character. He was the character. Every growl, every scream, every bar full of pain came from a real place. There was no separate persona. It was Earl Simmons, brilliant, damaged, and still tied to the streets even after he took over the charts. From 1991 to 2013, DMX was arrested more than 30 times. Not an exaggeration. More than 30 arrests across different states involving all kinds of charges. It wasn't rumor or gossip, it was documented. His life read like a legal timeline soaked in gasoline. In 1998, only months after It's Dark and Hell Is Hot went platinum, he was caught with an unlicensed firearm in New Jersey. The industry was stunned. He had just broken through as a superstar and problems were already closing in on him. By 2000, the headlines only got louder. DMX was arrested for a carjacking incident in Buffalo after reportedly taking someone's vehicle during a heated moment. Witnesses claimed things escalated fast, and he drove off in another person's car. It was clear his battles weren't just on wax. They were following him everywhere he went. No stage lights, no protection, just X moving raw, angry, and impulsive. In 2004, one of his wildest incidents unfolded at JFK Airport in New York. He got arrested for pretending to be an FBI agent and trying to take over a vehicle. Police said he flashed a fake badge, shouted federal commands, and tried to run off with a car right in the terminal. When officers searched the SUV he was driving, they reported finding crack and a firearm inside. By 2007, things got even darker. Animal cruelty charges hit after authorities raided his property in Arizona. They found malnourished pit bulls, some already gone, others chained up without food or water. DMX said he hadn't been home for months, but the court wasn't convinced. In the years after, the arrests kept coming. Substance possession, parole violations, unpaid child support, driving without a license, assaulting officers, skipping bail. The list kept stacking up. Sometimes he did a couple of days, sometimes months, but the pattern never changed. He stayed in trouble, and he never pretended his life was anything other than painful and chaotic. It turned into a cycle. For every hit single, there was a mugshot. For every sold-out show, there was a warrant. For every verse about struggle, faith, and inner demons, there was another courtroom shot of DMX looking worn out, frustrated, and isolated. But people who really knew the streets, and especially someone like Jay-Z, understood this wasn't just an artist with legal problems. This was a man who didn't fear anything. DMX didn't care about rules. He didn't care about deals. He didn't care about what came after his choices. In a 2009 jailhouse interview, when asked if he feared end, he said, "I ain't scared to end, man. I done seen worse than hell." Jay-Z understood that. A lot of people did. That's why, even when both of them dropped subliminals, it stayed controlled. Jay came with cold-coded lines. DMX came with growls and direct shots. But neither one pushed it past a certain point. That wasn't about respect, it was about awareness. Jay-Z knew what it meant to go at someone with nothing left to lose, someone who had stared into darkness and refused to blink. In boardrooms, DMX was unpredictable. In studios, he was lightning. But in real life, he was dangerous, and everyone around them understood it. Not dangerous in the way rappers pretend to be, but dangerous in the way a cornered, wounded animal moves. The type that bites whether you react or not. Jay-Z, no matter how high he climbed, never ignored that truth about DMX. By 2003, the balance of power had shifted completely. On one side, Jay-Z was rising through the highest levels of business and culture. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He was turning into a mogul, rubbing shoulders with executives, dropping hits, and shaping himself as a strategic public figure. His relationship with Beyoncé lifted his image even further, giving him a clean, poised persona that the corporate world embraced. By 2006, he wasn't just running Rockefeller, he was the president of Def Jam. On the other side, DMX was still raw, still carrying that same fire, but now weighed down by addiction, legal battles, and an industry that quietly began to shut him out. What made it hurt more was the belief that the doors closing on him were being locked by someone on the inside. From 2003 to 2006, DMX watched Def Jam, his label, his foundation, drift further away from him. And he wasn't imagining it. There were real signs. As president, Jay-Z approved budgets, greenlit albums, and shaped marketing pushes. And during his time in that seat, a few key moves confirmed for DMX what he feared. First, Def Jam began pouring its energy into younger, polished acts. Artists like Rihanna, Neo, and Young Jeezy became top priorities. Their sound fit the new vision. Sleek, marketable, clean. They got the full machine behind them. Meanwhile, DMX's project stalled, meetings delayed, plans paused, conversations shifted to other priorities. Then came 2006, the turning point. DMX released his sixth studio album, Year of the Dog, again. Fans expected a comeback. They were ready for it. The music had the same raw pain X was known for, but the label barely pushed it. No promotion, no radio momentum, no rollout, no proper tour support. It seemed intentional. He didn't just feel overlooked, he felt erased, forgotten, replaced. People inside the industry later said quiet moves were happening behind the scenes. Features with DMX were shelved, collabs were shut down. His name stopped appearing in important discussions. Even DJs who used to scream his name started going quiet. Why? Because DMX wasn't seen as a safe investment anymore. He was unpredictable, intense, risky. And under Jay-Z's leadership, Def Jam had entered a new era. Smoother, brand safe, corporate friendly, built for endorsements and crossover fame. That shift left DMX standing outside the building he once helped keep alive, wondering when the industry stopped being built for someone like him. There wasn't space for someone the industry saw as unpredictable, so DMX made a move on his own terms. He walked away from Def Jam and went independent. It was bold, it gave him freedom, but it also left him exposed. No more big budgets, no more major label machines, no more safety net. He started recording under smaller labels, taking shows overseas and dropping music without the push he once had. And through every step of that grind, the anger didn't fade, it grew. He felt betrayed not just by the system, but by Jay-Z himself. In his mind, they came from the same trenches, two wolves in a world of sheep. They fought, struggled, climbed. But when the power shifted, Jay didn't reach back. He kept quiet. And DMX held on to that silence. When the 2010s hit, the energy between the two shifted into a strange calm. On the surface, Jay-Z had turned into a global force. Rock Nation expanded into sports, media, tech. He was building partnerships worth more than most labels. By 2010, he wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was the example of how far the game could take someone. Albums like Watch the Throne and 444 showed he had moved way past street corners and into full business territory. Meanwhile, DMX was fighting a different battle. Addiction, jail time, and lifelong trauma had worn him down. He wasn't the unstoppable chart slayer he used to be, but he hadn't disappeared. And even in the chaos, there were signs Jay-Z still felt something for him. In 2012, quiet talk started moving through the industry. There were discussions about DMX linking with Rock Nation. People close to Jay said they wanted to bring X in under the management side, not as a new artist, but as a respected legend. The plan was to help stabilize his career, set up shows, maybe build toward another album. But the deal collapsed. Some said X didn't trust the people reaching out. Others said he didn't want anyone guiding his steps, especially not Jay-Z. To DMX, the issue wasn't paperwork or streaming numbers. It was loyalty. It was truth. It was whether the intentions behind the offer felt real. And the industry, as usual, had a different agenda. Even with all the chaos around him, pieces of DMX's brilliance kept breaking through. One of the strongest moments came in 2020 at the height of the pandemic when he stepped into the Verzuz Arena for a live virtual face-off with Snoop Dogg, millions tuned in, and for the first time in a long while, fans saw X looking grounded, healthy, and fully present. He wasn't slurring, he wasn't drifting, he was focused, emotional, and connected. He joked, he smiled, and he performed the classics with that same fire, sometimes with tears in his eyes. It showed who he might have been if life had given him even a little room to breathe. Behind the scenes, Jay-Z was watching too. Years later, he spoke on their complicated history in an interview. His tone wasn't cold, and it wasn't calculated. It sounded heavy, almost like he carried something deeper about their past. Jay said, X brought out something in me that nobody else did. I respected him. I just couldn't control him. That one line carried the whole truth. Control was never something DMX wanted. Not from the streets, not from the industry, not from any executive, and definitely not from a former rival who ended up running the label. What X wanted was honesty, real loyalty, protection without strings attached. the kind of love that didn't come with conditions. And in an industry full of filters and polished masks, that kind of realness barely existed. As time moved on, whatever chance they had at a real reconciliation started slipping away. There were no stage moments, no headlines about peace, no Roc Nation signing. Instead, what remained was something quieter, a shared sense of regret. DMX regretted trusting almost no one. Jay-Z regretted stepping in too late. And even though they occupied completely different worlds by then, Jay draped in tailored suits, DMX fighting to reclaim his voice, their stories stayed tied together, not just through rivalry, but through a deeper thread built on history, impact, and wounds that never fully closed. Then came the moment that froze the entire hip-hop world. In the early hours of April 2nd, 2021, sirens cut through the quiet streets of White Plains, New York, as emergency teams rushed toward a private home. Earl Simmons, known to the world as DMX, had suffered a massive heart attack. Triggered by a substance overdose, everything unfolded fast. By the time DMX reached the hospital, doctors said his brain had already gone too long without oxygen. Machines kept his body going, but he never opened his eyes again. For a full week, fans around the world prayed, posted tributes, and gathered outside the hospital in silence. On April 9, 2021, at just 50 years old, DMX was pronounced deceased. The world mourned loud, Jay-Z mourned quiet. He didn't drop long statements or tribute tracks. Instead, people close to the situation said Jay-Z and Beyonce quietly bought DMX's master recordings so they could give them to his children. A move done away from cameras, a move rooted in respect. DMX wasn't just a rapper, he was a storm, a force that couldn't be measured by charts or awards. And years later, 50 Cent would say DMX was the realest artist he ever saw, and that Jay was lucky he made it out of that Def Jam room untouched. When DMX passed, the industry felt the loss instantly. No amount of spotlight could capture what he carried. Jay-Z never sent direct shots at DMX again. No slick metaphors, no coded lines, no attempts to reshape the narrative, because some energies don't get challenged. Some moments stay frozen in time. That day in the early 2000s, inside Def Jam, when DMX stormed in shirtless and furious, Jay didn't just see a competitor, he saw a message. Not from a rapper, but from a man who had lived through too much and had nothing left to fear. A man shaped by loyalty, pain, and survival. From that point on, Jay stayed silent on their tension, not out of weakness but understanding. Some stories don't need edits. Some legends speak louder when nobody says a word. If you made it this far, drop a comment, hit like, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and I'll see you on the next one.